Hello dear students, I hope all of you are good and safe at your home. In today's class, we are going to start the chapter number 2 of class 8 science, which is microorganisms, friends and foe. So students, as the name of the chapter is microorganisms, friends and foe. So before starting this chapter, it is very important for us to understand the meaning of microorganisms and why we are calling this microorganism as friend and foe. So we will come to know about all these things at the end of this chapter. So now let's get started. So before starting this chapter, let us understand what is the meaning of microorganisms. So here you can see, as the name says, microorganisms means these are the living things which are so small that we cannot see it by our naked eyes. So how we can see these organisms? By using the special instrument or the special tool, that is your magnifying lenses or your microscope. So microscopes are also of various types, like light microscope, compound microscope, electronic microscope. So all these we will come to know in our higher classes. So now what we are going to learn about microorganisms in this chapter, that microorganisms may be unicellular or multicellular. जो microorganism होते हैं, they can be of unicellular, means they are made up of only one cell, whereas multicellular means they are made up of more than one cell. Now microorganisms may exist alone or in colonies, which means that जो microorganisms हैं वो या तो अकेले भी मिल सकते हैं या फिर colonies में. Colonies मतलब group में. Alright, like in this picture you can see, here you can see mostly the microorganisms are in colonies because they are in group. Now, next, in this picture you can see the different types of microorganisms, and mostly all of them are living in colonies. Now, microorganisms are found in all kinds of environment like ice cold climate, hot springs, desert, marshy lands, etc. And they are also found inside the bodies of other organisms. So we can say that microorganisms are found everywhere, from very cold place to very hot place also. Now we are going to learn about the types of microorganisms. Now there are mainly four types of microorganisms. They are bacteria, fungi, algae and protozoans. So we will learn about all these one by one. There is one more type, that is viruses. They are also considered as microorganisms, but they are different from other microorganisms. And why they are different from other microorganisms? Because they are neither living nor non-living. So what they are? So basically what happens, that these organisms, these viruses, they need a host body to reproduce. When these viruses are outside the living body, they are dead. But the moment they enter inside the host or the living body, it becomes living and they start to reproduce. So that is why we call these viruses not as microorganisms, but we call them as microscopic organisms. So what is the difference between microorganisms and microscopic organisms? Which means that these viruses are microscopic, means which we can see it by only microscopes. Whereas microorganisms, they are organisms, they are living, and they are so small that we cannot see them by our naked eyes. I hope you understand the difference between these two. What is the difference between microorganism and microscopic things? So now, dear students, we are going to discuss the few examples of microorganisms. The first one is your algae. The example of algae are Chlamydomonas and Spirogyra. Example of fungi are bread molds, Penicillium and Aspergillus. Example of protozoans are amoeba and paramecium. So here you can see the different types of different shapes, structures of microorganisms. Now we are going to discuss about the virus. So here you can see the picture of virus also. So this virus has this head. So this head is also known as the capsule, and this head is followed by this tail, and after that tail you can see the end plate, and after that end plate the tail fibers are present. So here you can see the example of HIV virus. The full form of HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. So about this structure you will study in your higher classes. Now we are moving ahead and we are going to discuss about the microorganisms which are friendly or which are friend to us. Now there are many microorganisms which are very useful to us. Without them we cannot expect our life on this earth. So what are these microorganisms? Let us discuss about it. Now the first one is the microorganisms like bacteria. There are many bacteria which are useful for decomposing the organic matters, and after decomposition what they produce the manure. In our previous chapter, in the chapter number 1st, the crop production and management, we studied about this difference between manure and fertilizers. So what are these manures? These manures are obtained by the decomposition of the organic matter. So how this decomposition occurs? This is this can happen only because of these bacteria. Now next one is the microorganisms help in fixing atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen compounds in the soil, and this increases the fertility of the soil. We already know there are few plants which are not able to take that atmospheric nitrogen. So what they do, they have legumes in their roots, like they have these root nodules. Okay, so there are pulses. They are the leguminous plants. They have root nodules, and inside these root nodules these bacteria live. So what is the function of these bacteria? Is that they fix this atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen compounds. So these bacteria are also very helpful for us. So what is the name of that bacteria? Can you name that bacteria which fixes the atmospheric nitrogen? Yes, you are correct. That is rhizobium. Now next, microorganisms are used for making curd from milk, for making cheese, pickles, bread, cakes, pastries, alcohol, wine, vinegar, etc. Okay, so here you can see how much these microorganisms are useful to us. We all like eating cakes, pastries. So how do we obtain these things? Because of these microorganisms. Okay, so what are these? What is the name of these microorganisms that we will discuss here only? Okay, now first, before that we will discuss one more use of microorganism, is that microorganisms are used for making medicines. All right, so now we are going to discuss the name of the bacteria which is used for converting this milk into curd. So that bacteria is lactobacillus. Okay, now next, for making this bread there is one fungus called the yeast. What they do, they reproduce in flour dough and produces carbon dioxide during respiration. So you all remember in our previous class, in our 7th class, you studied about the types of respiration. So we generally have two types of respiration, that is aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So here, can you tell this yeast organism what kind of respiration they do? They do the anaerobic respiration, and during that anaerobic respiration what happens, they respire or they produce energy in the absence of in the absence of oxygen. All right, now next one is your for making alcohol. The same fungus yeast is used. What happens in this? These yeast, they reproduce in the sugar solution and convert it into the alcohol, and this process is known as the fermentation. So we can say that by the process of fermentation we obtain this alcohol, and the organism which is responsible for making alcohol are yeast. Now next one is for making the medicines. You must have heard about the antibiotics. Okay, so what happens, these antibiotics, what they do, they kill, okay, they kill the pathogens or generally the bacteria or the fungi. So they stop or they kill the growth of this bacteria causing disease causing microorganisms. So for the example of these antibiotics are streptomycin, tetracycline and erythromycin. Now one more thing, vaccines. How these vaccines are produced? They are, what happens, we use these dead or weakened microbes in the vaccines. Okay, so what we do during this, we take the dead or weakened microbes and introduce into the body to produce antibiotics. So what happens when these dead microbes or weakened microbes, when they entered inside our body, what happens, our body automatically generates the antibiotics. Our body starts to make the immune system of our body, they start to produce the antibodies. Now these antibodies protects the body from disease causing microbes. So disease like polio, cholera, typhoid, smallpox, hepatitis, etc. can be prevented by taking vaccines. So I hope all of you have understood till now, and in our next class we will discuss about what are the microorganisms which are harmful to us. All right.